because it's diluted. You say it's concentrated, it's really diluted. You've got a lot of airflow going on. You're not sucking it directly out of a cigarette. And you're getting a lot less than you might think, and a lot less than the anti-smoker crowd would like you to think.
But I don't know if you've actually been into these places, because, like I said, that study was clearly put on by somebody trying to prove a point, one way or the other. And you can't compare one bar to another. In Alberta, they changed the smoking laws, the very last of the entire country. And what they did is they allowed bars to create a smoking room for an amount of time. And people who invested in these smoking rooms were allowed to keep their smoking in the bar for a year longer than people who hadn't created a special room for smoking. Being somebody who works in these places on a consistent basis, and knowing how I would cough things up that weren't there prior to working in the bar, I can't think that all I would have inhaled in a year is 3 cigarettes, because it was more concentrated. That's where all the smokers were. So I think, in a sense, that study is flawed, because you cannot judge 1 or 2 studies to be one answer for everyone, because every room is going to be different. The ventilation is going to be different.
Absolutely.
There are so many variables, right? But
I think it's interesting that there have only been these 2 studies. That's it. You would think that in the interest of finding out what's really going on, that the anti-smoker groups would have done more and more extensive studies for this. But they haven't, because they don't want to know. They don't like those results. And there's also, of course, the issue of ventilation. A bar can put in a ventilation system, which is similar to a ventilation system that's used in ERs, and have people smoke and actually have the air inside be cleaner than the air outside. But that's not allowed. That's not allowed in any place with a smoking ban. And so if this were really a health issue, it'd be very easy to pass a law that says, well, if you want to allow smoking, you can put in this ventilation. This will do the job. We know this will clean the air out.
But isn't that also a cost?
It is a cost.
Right.
But as a bar owner, if you can put in a cost, now these units typically cost $3,000 to $6,000. It's not an awful lot of money. Well, it's a good chunk of money, but for a small business, they can afford that. And they can certainly afford that if it's going to mean the difference between losing half of their clientele. Because if you've got a business that caters to smokers, caters to a smoking crowd, a blue-collar crowd, that could be the difference between surviving and failing. But I've never seen any place where they said, all right, here's the air quality standard you have to meet. So you can use ventilation, you can use whatever you want, as long as you meet this air quality standard. That's what's important. Instead, it's always no smoking. That's it. Can't smoke. This whole idea that it's designed to protect bartenders and waitresses and musicians like yourself, it's not at all about that. It's designed to stop people from smoking, to make it impossible for them to smoke anywhere, and to really scare people. We had some just horribly offensive ads put out by the health department in New York State where, a girl walks into a bar and there's smoke and a little whiff of it goes down her lungs and you're taking the zoom down her lungs and you watch her have a heart attack. They want to scare everyone into thinking that if you're anywhere near a smoker, even if they're not smoking, that's the latest thing, third-hand smoke. Even if they're not smoking, they're a horrible danger to you. And so the idea is to denormalize smoking. That's what Stanton Glantz, that's his big thing. We have to denormalize smoking. In other words, smokers are abnormal people, and they're scary people, and you better stay away from them because they will hurt you just if you're near them. That's really what this is all about.
Speaking of that, the initial document that I found from the Forces website, which was, I believe, confiscated from someone at, I think it was the CDC, but I'm not sure. But it was a memo or an email or something that one person in that building was sending to another one, and it was talking about the idea that what we should do is we should find a way to make secondhand smoke seem like it's harmful. That way we can say that anyone that smokes in a house with children is committing child abuse. I don't remember. Right. I couldn't find it. Maybe you know which one I'm speaking of.
I think I've seen that. It was an old memo from way back before all this started.
Right.
And I couldn't tell you exactly where to find it. But having dealt with these nicotine nannies, having dealt, one-on-one with James Repace, having dealt with some of these people, I can tell you that's really where they're coming from. The whole idea is to vilify smokers. What you're doing is horrible. It's costing me money. It's costing me my health. You are bad. Get away from me. And that's generally the attitude that they want to put forth.
And where that was successful, as I mentioned earlier, was in California. When I first moved to San Diego in '97, and the smoking ban went into effect, there was something so wrong about something I would look at as propaganda. The ads on radio and TV to try to get everyone to support this ban of smoking. One of the commercials was so offensive to any kind of common sense that you could have. It was waitresses begging you to support this smoking ban. One of them was saying, "Hi, I'm your waitress. I serve you the coffee every day, 8 to 10. I'm asking you a favor. Could you please support California's smoking ban? Because I'm, as a waitress who's often around cigarette smoke, I'm concerned about my health." And at the time, I had been waiting tables for about 4 years. I did not know any waitresses that were not smokers. And this was it was appalling to me. They were attempting to make people think something, and generally because I think that the majority of any population is generally lemmings. They are going to go ahead with whatever the status quo is. And so if they see a commercial on TV where waitresses are asking you not to smoke, they're going to say, "Oh yeah, those waitresses don't like it when we smoke around them." And another ad I heard was in Philadelphia. These two guys going, "We don't smoke. Smoking is not cool. We don't smoke. We're making a new rule. We don't smoke. We've got music and CDs, and we've got our MTV, word for word, and the same enunciation." That's how they did it. And I just find that to be offensive because it's so ridiculous. Because I don't understand how people could fall for that. And I think that it's appalling that the majority of you can pick the subject, whether it's politics or religion or what we're talking about now. It's appalling to me when the majority in control complains about unfairness. And in this subject, the majority that's in control are people who believe that secondhand smoke is harmful, and they've never actually found the facts. They've just been told that. Can you please share a little bit on the EPA study of '93?
Basically what that was a study where they took all the studies they could find on secondhand smoke, and at that time there were 34 of them. They rejected one of them, and they did what's called a meta-analysis. Now, epidemiologists will defend meta-analysis. What it does is it takes a whole bunch of studies, and you kind of throw them in a blender and chew them all up together, and then pull out the numbers that you like. And it's something that's very, very difficult to do accurately, and something that's very, very easy to fake and distort, which is what the EPA did. They started with 33 studies. They cherry-picked 11 of them. Half of the studies that they picked didn't show any increase in mortality or morbidity because of secondhand smoke. They relied heavily on a study called the Fontham study, which wasn't even completed yet, but looked like it was going to go their way, and concocted 3,000 deaths from secondhand smoke in a then population of 280 million people. With epidemiology, you have something that's called a confidence interval. And a confidence interval is what the real number could be. So you may say, okay, there's a 150% increase in something, in X amongst people that do Y. But the confidence interval is 1.25 to 1.75, which means the real number can be 25% to 75%. It never comes out quite that precise, but the number we have is 150%. You can think of it as a margin of error. Technically, it's not exactly the same, but it works pretty much the same way.